Pedro from A&P-REACTS. I'm here today with Rick from The Lion's Daughter to talk about the upcoming album, Skin Show, April 9th on Season of Mist. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, man. Yourself?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Thank you for taking the time today to chat about the record. I have quite a few things to run by you because I really enjoyed this album, but for as much as I enjoyed it, it also left questions within me that I wanted to understand the album a little bit better. And perhaps the first question where we should get this whole conversation started is, what was the switch that you felt like you needed to turn either on or off, going from the sound of the first two records into the sound of the last two records?
Well, the synths and stuff were something that I always heard in my head. I just didn't know. We couldn't figure out the logistics of making them happen. A couple different times we tried bringing somebody into the band that would play synthesizers or whatever, and nobody really had the same vision that we did for what we wanted it to sound like. So it just never worked. So it was really just a matter of like, okay, for this next record, we after we made Existence is Horror, which was our first for Season of Mist, it was like, all right, well, let's not just do part two of that. Like, let's do something different. And adding the synthesizers and stuff was exciting to us. And for me, anyway, it was like, all right, I want to finally write the music that I've been looking for, for years, what I've wanted to hear, which is that mix of like the John Carpenter, creepy horror movie soundtrack stuff with like aggressive kind of black metal stuff. Um, so really, it's just to me, it was a natural progression, and it seemed like really the only option was to introduce a new element and try something a little different rather than just recreating the same thing over and over that we've done. And also, a whole lot of bands do the sludgy black metal thing way better than we did anyway. So we'll just try to carve our own niche.
It was really interesting for me listening to the album because I drives me crazy now with modern bands, specifically more power metal driven bands, and how much synthesizer they use, and it's like the driver of the sound, and it just controls everything that's happening with the record. So I was a little bit on the back foot when I got into this album. The moment I started listening to this record, I was like, "Whoa, wait a minute! You guys are using it in a completely different way." I mean, the atmosphere that the synths create on this record is excellent. I felt like I was in a thriller or in a horror
Hmm.
movie. Like it was like the soundtrack that was playing when I was heading into the basement, and I'm like, well, if I'm listening to this stuff, I probably shouldn't be going into the basement. Something bad is about to happen. So, like, how do you feel like you discovered that sound? Because it's very different from what other bands are doing. You guys did it in a very unique way.
I think it came naturally to me as a huge fan of horror movies and thrillers and sci-fi and stuff like that. Um, that feeling that you're talking about of like don't go into the basement or or the impending doom,
Yeah.
dread around the corner kind of thing. That's the shit that excites me and always has since I was a kid, getting into horror movies and stuff. And it's the same thing that I really grew to love about metal and bands like Venom and shit that were like it was scary. It was that same feeling when you were looking at the cover of Welcome to Hell. You had that same feeling you got from watching a horror movie or something. Just like fuck, what is this dangerous spooky thing? So to me, it was just a matter of tapping into that. We don't. I know what you're talking about with like the power metal thing, and then there are bands like like Demo Borgir and stuff that use a lot of synthesizers with black metal and stuff like that. But that kind of grandiose like spectacle thing that a lot of those bands do, that's never appealed to me that much. I like I like that the sense of dread that you're talking about. Like I think that's fun to tap into and play around with.
Are you closing the doors to that sludge? You said there's a lot of bands doing it better than you guys ever did. Are you closing the doors to that side of the band, or you're not the kind of guy that closes any doors? You always like to leave things open and you never know what the future holds.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say. Yeah, there's nothing. No doors have ever really been closed for the most part. I think even on the new record, the last track on the record is called "The Chemist," and that song is actually is pretty doomy and sludgy, kind of. Just I guess technically I think of it that way because of the way that the guitars kind of linger and it's down tempo, and it is a darker kind of murky doomy song. but at the same time, it is set up with those synthesizers and that kind of pulsating John Carpenter bass line kind of thing. So it probably doesn't come off as sludgy or anything. So I think, although we haven't closed those doors, I doubt we'll do it in the same way that we did years ago. I don't see a reason that we would ever do that unless somehow just accidentally some riff was so great, or a part was so great, or there was some idea that didn't need anything else and it worked as this thing. Then we'll see where that path leads, and you know
You would try to get right into it.
possibly, yeah, you never know. I have no idea. I never know what the next record's going to be, so I'm,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not sure where the next one's going. But
You talk about John Carpenter, but as I'm listening to this album, I'm getting a little bit of a vibe from Black Mirror, because I thought that you had that sort of ominous, dark, scary, but at the same time inspiring, making you want to look and see what's behind the curtain. So a little bit of a Black Mirror vibe, not just from a single song perspective, but also how all the tracks play out in terms of also the story that the tracks are telling. So do you see it from that perspective, the album being a little bit of pieces that then make a much larger picture?
I do. The problem becomes that I'm not even sure what that. Sometimes I'm not sure what that bigger picture is, or how to even explain it. Like when we started this, and you were saying that you had some questions. I have some questions about the record as well. I don't completely understand where it all came from or what it all means. I know how it feels to me and how it all works together, and I kind of I can feel what the bigger picture of it all is, but it's really hard to explain or pinpoint. It's not like, it's not Mastodon Leviathan, like where this is about Moby Dick or something like very specific. There's a lot of little ideas and moods and emotions and just weird textures going on that all make sense, and they live in this same world that is the record that Skin Show. But I don't exactly know whatever it all means. It's probably not good. It's not good, whatever it all is.
That's why I went with Black Mirror, because Black Mirror has the ability to have the individuality of each episode, which I felt the record had the individuality of each song. But then when you look at all the episodes together, the series has that atmosphere that you expect from it the moment you press play with the first episode. And I felt that the record had this atmosphere that was common across every single track, but every single track had its own fingerprint, if you will. You
Sure.
see
Yeah,
that?
and I think like a good series, like something like a Black Mirror, every song is an episode. Every song is a different story. They don't really it's not a show like I don't know, Lost or something is the first thing that comes to mind, where every song directly leads into the next one, and it's this bigger story. No, it is a bunch of small stories contained in the same, I guess, series.
Where did the inspiration for this album come from?
Uh, I'm again not sure. um, it was one of those things. I knew that I didn't want to just do Future Cult Part Two, which Future Cult was the last record, and that was way more of the horror sci-fi thing. I wanted to kind of see where taking the synths and kind of all the different elements that I had to play with, um, and kind of see what else could be done. Um, so that's why the synths are a little more natural sounding and stuff, and some of the stuff is like the tempos are eased back a little bit. Parts have a little more room to breathe, but I think it overall became. I don't know exactly what the inspiration was, but I wanted to create a record that was a little more dramatic and eerie versus just aggressive horror vibes, and kind of see where that would lead. So I don't know. I mean, I thought a lot about, for some reason, a placeholder in my mind that I kept going to was the whole like 70s 80s Times Square vibe of just like rundown porno theaters and just the sleaze and
All the
just
good,
what's that.
all the good stuff.
Right, right. Well, there's all that stuff. Like, I don't know. I think that concept is fascinating because it's like bright flashing lights, and it's the appeal of like sex and feeling good and drugs, but really underneath all of it, I mean, barely under the surface is just, yeah, this desperation and ugliness and abuse and just all of this really terrible shit that goes hand in hand with this like thrill of sexuality and excitement and adventure. And so I kind of kept thinking about that a lot. When
Yeah, I didn't think you would be walking the mean streets of St. Louis and the inspiration for this record would pop in. I mean, this has a little bit of that either old school LA or that New York vibe, like the really run down, sex straight New York feel to it.
Yeah, totally. A big part of that might be that, we all the stuff was written and recorded while in quarantine. So it was kind of nice for me really to when I would sit down to write stuff or experiment with parts or whatever to just go somewhere else in my head. Kind of just have a different setting in mind that wasn't St. Louis and wasn't my house, you know. So,
Yeah, you want to go into a different dimension altogether.
mhm. And in my opinion, like that's what some of the best records do. I think they just create their own unique little worlds, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, your own ecosystem.
Mhm.
What do you feel like you took, if or is there anything that you feel that you've taken from Future Cult into this album, but just improved it 10 times fold?
I'm not totally sure. I know, I mean, because Future Cult was such an experiment, it was just a lot of like figuring out how the pieces could fit together, and the songwriting was sort of secondary. It was more of like I don't know. It was a little flashier. It was like, look at this. Now look at this part, and we can make these things work together. And it was a lot of that. So it was kind of like, okay, now that I know that things can work that way, let's really focus on the songwriting and try to just actually write some good songs. Maybe have some things that are memorable, or even, God forbid, catchy or hooky, which I think a lot of modern metal bands just kind of overlook completely. Um, so I thought a lot about. There's a song on Future Cult called "Die Into Us," which is actually the one that we released a video for, and it's my favorite song on the record. And really looking at it, that song is kind of one part that just repeats and does different things, and different things happen vocally around it and whatever. But it's a really solid part to where you didn't need to add a bunch of stuff. So I wanted to do that more, where instead of a song having 7 to 10 parts that it goes through, like let's have 1 to 3 really solid parts, milk them for all they're worth, and get out of the song. It can be 4 minutes. It doesn't have to be a 7 to 10 minute opus of exploring all these different ideas or whatever. Like, no, let's just take what works and really hammer that home and leave everything else aside. So it was really just, yeah, if any inspiration came from Future Cult, it was just like taking those things and making the actual songwriting better.
The synth sound on the album is definitely one of the driving elements. I mean, I don't feel, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't feel like this is a record that you could say is guitar driven or vocally driven. The synthesizers are really the driver of the atmosphere and therefore the driver of the experience. When you're creating these tracks, at what point in time do they come into the picture? Like, how do you put these songs together? Because to me, processing the song feels very simple. Like it's easy for me to understand what the track has to offer, but
Mhm.
I don't think it's simple to put it together at all. There's a simplicity about it, but it hides the complexity that goes into making it. So how do you put it all together?
Typically, I think the synths come first a lot of times because it's almost easier. When I'm messing with synthesizers, I have no idea what I'm doing at all. So if I try to do it the other way and I have a guitar part or something first and I'm trying to find a certain synth sound, I usually can't because I really have zero idea what I'm doing with those things. So it's usually a matter of just playing around until accidentally stumbling on something that sounds cool. Like, oh shit, okay, I need to record this so I can keep that. And then like, what kind of guitars could go over that? Like, oh, this kind of sounds cool with that. What should the drums do? Let me kind of just this little keyboard MIDI fake drum controller I have, bang out some drum beats or whatever. Um, so it kind of pieces together. It gets pieced together that way pretty often. I think there might be a song or two on the new record where the riffs came first because I had a 4 month period where I set my house on fire, and I lived in a hotel room for 4 months, and all I had was I had like some clothes and I had a guitar with me, And so I just sat in the hotel room and watched YouTube, and I decided to learn how to play like old Rat and Dokken and Van Halen song, and just all like old cock rock stuff that I love that I never thought to learn how to play because it wasn't Slayer. So
Did you just call it cock rock?
cock rock, yeah.
I've never heard that before, but I'm
Oh,
going
you
to use
haven't?
it from I'm taking it. I don't know if it's copyrighted by you or not, but I'm
Oh,
taking.
it's definitely not. I don't think so. I'm never sure what to call that stuff because I wouldn't call, bands like that or like Wasp or something. I wouldn't call that glam rock or hair metal or anything necessarily, but it's like
Cock
it's
rock?
not it's not just metal. I don't know, but cock rock. It's
I love it.
has to do with your cock and rocking. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, but since I sat and I was learning how to play a bunch of that stuff, which was really fun, and actually a lot of it's way more challenging than I expected it to be. Um, but that really influenced and kind of changed the way that I would play guitar when I picked it up. So I think you could, if you really listen on the new records, you could hear stuff that's like that kind of sounds like a Dokken riff or something. Like there's some shit in there that's like that. So there are a few riffs that came first um, because of that. But it's also funny because right now we're getting ready for a live stream thing that we're doing, and we're actually we're normally just a three piece, but we're adding a guitar player for this. Adding another guitar player just so the guitars sound fuller, and then I can do some stuff with synths, and it just gives us a lot more room. Um, but it's funny as I'm sitting and teaching this other guy the songs. Some of the songs I'm like, nope, that's really it. That is all there is to that guitar. You're just holding a C chord and strumming it for 4.5 minutes, and nothing else is happening because the synths are taking the lead, or the vocal does or whatever, and you know the guitars just do what the guitars need to do, and sometimes that's very little.
I think sometimes they were there just kind of filling in the gaps,
Yeah.
the sound gaps that are created by lack of something. And that's why I said the synths are really the drivers of the experience, of the sound, of the atmosphere, of everything. And that's not necessarily a bad thing for a record like this because it works really well. You guys were able to create uh I don't know, something palpable, something with depth, which sometimes it's missing on albums that are driven by synths as much as this record is. Now, do you feel like you're a storyteller and you're on this record, you're telling stories with the sound or with the lyrics?
No, probably not. Usually, like I kind of dread the lyrics part. I really do. Like my interest is in making music. I think that's really fun. And the lyrics are just something that have to be there. I should make it sound like they're more important than they are to me, but they're not. They're just not very important, and I really hate doing them. I wish we had a singer. I wish we had somebody else that could do all the vocal stuff and deal with that stuff because I hate it, and it takes me hours and hours and hours to just come up with like a line that doesn't just feel embarrassing and stupid. Um, so I don't know if I guess technically some of these songs do tell a story, and if you're reading along, some of the stories are pretty clear. Um, like the song, the title track, "Skin Show," it is pretty literally about like an abandoned porno theater, and you can get that from reading it. But I definitely never set out to like be a storyteller or tell stories or write. If I could get somebody to just ghost write lyrics for us, I would do that, but I'd maybe have to pay them.
Yeah, that would cut into your royalties.
Right, right.
I mean, they're probably already slim pickings, considering the music business these days. You really don't want to share that pie with anybody else,
No, no, I could buy them a cup of coffee with that, and that's
and not,
probably
not even
about
a
it.
Starbucks one.
No, it would be a homemade butt cup. Yeah,
And you can listen to some cock rock while drinking it.
yeah,
We,
absolutely.
we've gone full circle.
Hmm. Hmm.
uh, your vocals. You're talking about the vocals. You're talking about the lyrics. How much you don't like that aspect. But I felt the vocals on this record were a little bit of the glue that held the album together because it allows you to go into different places with different songs, pull the listener into different directions. But the vocals are always this consistency that stays true, very balanced throughout the record. Was that a little bit of your goal to keep something a little bit more uniform that gives some cohesiveness to the record?
No, that only happened by accident because I can only really do one vocal style. So really weren't options So, I think there are
The
a couple
honesty.
spots where the vocal makes an attempt to be more melodic. I wish I could do more of that because it's really fun when it works. And I prefer, not always, but for the most part, if I think about stuff I listen to all the time, man, I listen to, Danzig and shit like that more than something like, Napalm Death or something, even though I love both bands. But I'd like to listen to a singer that's singing or doing something interesting or throwing some, not just barking the whole time. But I wasn't blessed with Danzig's voice or anyone else's. So that's why you get the consistently bad vocal through the
All
whole
the way
thing.
through.
Yep.
I have to ask you about my favorite song on the record. I know because the label told me this, that you guys are working on a video for this song, and that is Curtains.
Hmm.
I absolutely love this track. The moment I heard it, it became instantly like one of my favorite songs. What can you tell me about a little bit of the background into that track?
Cool. Well, thanks for that. Yeah, there will be a video. I think next next week. I think that video is coming out, and it should be really cool. But um, so there's a thing. Okay, there's a thing. I wonder how obvious this is going to be to some people, but that song is my direct reaction to both Fight Fire with Fire and Battery. Um, both of those songs, obviously Metallica songs, do this thing where my ear and my brain can't figure out where the one is, where the downbeat and the upbeat happen on those songs. I'm kind of maybe getting overly technical trying to explain it, but um, Battery, it just where the snare is landing just keeps switching in my brain from the down to the upbeat, and on Fight Fire with Fire it does the same thing because of where James places his vocal. Like it sounds like the drums are on the downbeat, but he places his vocals on the up, so it throws your ear off. Anyway, this song, that main riff is very much like an old Metallica kind of riff. It's maybe one of the most straightforward just metal riffs that we've ever really done. Um, and for the first two lines, I am doing vocals on like the one, so on like the downbeat. And then for the next two lines, Scott, our bass player and other vocalist, he's doing his vocal parts on the two and on the upbeat. So really nothing in the music changes, but in your ear it sounds like it goes from dun 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 to dun 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 dun. It sounds like it turns into like a thrash song.
Mhm.
Anyway, that was the whole purpose behind that song was just like I want to copy what maybe Metallica intentionally or unintentionally did with like Fight Fire with Fire and fuck with the listener's ear. Um, and even like when we play it together, I have to not hear his vocals so I can just focus on the downbeat, or I can't come in right on the next part. It like still fucks with my ear and confuses me. Um, I don't know if that answers your question at all, but
It does, because I also felt that from a guitar perspective, that song was perhaps the one on the record that had a little bit more meat on the bone. It felt a little bit more guitar driven than any other track on the record. So that explains that as well.
yeah, it definitely does. But I mean, even that riff is just it varies a little bit at the end, but I mean, it really is just you know pretty repetitive and just kind of locks in, kind of like I really like stuff like Ministry and especially love the Psalm 69 record where it's just like you get that guitar riff and it just doesn't change, like it just keeps hammering home. So it's kind of that idea too, to just keep that guitar riff just really really solid. Um, but then when it goes into the next part, like the chorus of the song, that's a spot where the guitar does almost nothing, man. It it tremolo picks an open note and then it goes to the third fret and then it goes to the second and then it goes back open because there's a synth that's carrying that melody. And for me playing it, it's fine because I get to sing over that part anyway, so the guitar doesn't need to be super interesting. But that was a spot where it needed to open up. But yeah, that was as close as like to I think that song to me anyway. Especially with the guitars and how you break it down, like there are elements of Metallica and then like Amon Amarth sort of with the chorus, which are not neither of those are influences we would ever pull from before. So it was really fun to kind of play with more traditional metal,
Yeah,
stuff, but then adding the synthesizers and shit, making it its own kind of weird thing.
kind of dipping your toes into that kind of water.
Mhm.
Last question for you. When you look at this record, when you look at everything that this album has to offer, what part of this album represents you the best?
God, I hope none of it. Um, I'm not sure, man. It's one of those things that's, like this record, especially just because some of the themes have to, are sleazier and have to do with, with weird underbellies of like sexual things and just, I don't know, really, there's some really ugly shit living in this record. So I really want to hope that none of it represents me. Um, but I also think it's like good that I was able to explore those things and like come out feeling okay. Because I think if I were actually like a shitty person with something to hide, I couldn't write about those things. You know,
You would feel too naked.
what's that?
I think you would feel too naked. You would expose yourself a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Where yeah, if I was, um, I don't know. I'm not going to make any Bill Cosby references, but you know,
You kind of just did.
yeah. Enough said. Enough said. Um, yeah. So I don't know. I mean, if anything, like I think stuff that I would say actually truly represents me is something like, yeah, that song Curtains that we were talking about, just like the guitar riffs and like the love of like old Metallica and stuff like that, and just chuggy thrashy guitar riffs and stuff like that's definitely something that like is deep in my heart that I have always held dear, since the first time I heard that stuff as a kid. But as far as any of the lyrics or the themes or anything like that, really, like, no, I hope that that's not me in there, and I hope I'm not any of those characters. But I
You hope
mean,
it's not your subconscious mind playing tricks on you.
yeah, I mean, hey, if a year from now you're watching this video back and I'm canceled as fuck, I guess we'll know. I guess we'll know what came out about me. So
You have nothing to worry about. You don't come across as a Pepe Le Pew kind of guy.
that's good. That's good. I strive to not do that. So
What can I say? Like you're not French, so you don't have that going for you either. So
right.
so you have a few things going your way. I think you're going to be fine. I don't think anybody's going to try to cancel you. I think you're going to be absolutely fine.
Okay, good. I needed to hear that today.
All
Thanks.
right. I feel the same way because my son tells me that all the time, that one of these days somebody's going to cancel me.
Yeah,
Because I don't have a filter, right? So what comes to my brain kind of comes out of my mouth, and sometimes that's problematic in the days that we live in today. So
oh, for sure, for
so
sure.
so I
Well,
get that.
I've been kind of amazed that the second single that we put out, the song is literally called Sex Trap. No one has said a word. No one has said a word. I haven't seen a single comment or anyone having a problem with that because I was ready for it. I was ready to defend my position on why that song's called that and like what it's actually about. No, nobody said a fucking word.
That
So I
was a
guess that's
hill.
good.
That was a hill you were willing to die on.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. In a way, I was kind of looking forward to the challenge of it. I was looking forward to the argument, but it hasn't come yet. So we'll see. It's still early. The record's not even out yet, so it could still happen.
Don't worry. Like they're trying to cancel Eminem for a song that he released 10 years ago. So there's still a chance that 10 years down the line, people will go back into this track and then try to
Yeah,
cancel you then. So
yeah.
don't
Uh,
fret. There's no window of time when it comes to canceling people for stuff that they've done.
that's true. That's true. And maybe, well, maybe by now people have learned that there's a difference between, singing about something or talking about something versus advocating that.
Or
Um,
doing it. Yeah.
yeah. So maybe people have learned that by now, but
I doubt it.
we'll find out.
I totally doubt it.
The internet's a
Uh,
big place.
yeah, it is. Well, Rick, thank you very much for your time, man. I really appreciate chatting with you. The Lion's Daughter Skin Show out April 9th on Season of Mist. Absolutely gorgeous record. I must tell you, I had my doubts going in because I had some thoughts considering what the past of the band was and the direction you guys are going. The moment I pressed play, all doubts were removed, and I absolutely love this record.
That's awesome, man. I appreciate that. I really do.
Thank you very much for your time. All the best.
Yeah. Hey, thank you.
Take care.
All right. See ya.